Everyone talks about climate change as an urgent crisis. And of course, the science confirms the planet is warming. But what if the way institutions respond to that urgency actually creates a different kind of crisis? One of debt dependency, inefficient spending, and inflationary pressure. As part of global climate finance, countries are increasingly offered loans branded as climate resilience or green adaptation. These are not marginal grants. They are substantial debt instruments. Take Pakistan as an example. The country recently secured a $1.4 billion climate resilience loan from the IMF, while already servicing portions of a separate, multi-billion-dollar IMF program. Critics, including officials from neighboring countries, have raised concerns that such funds risk being diverted toward unrelated national priorities rather than tightly targeted climate projects. Bangladesh followed a similar path, becoming the first Asian country to access the IMF's Climate-Focused Resilience Fund in 2022, adding another layer of long-term liability to its national balance sheet. Here's the structural issue. These loans come with extended repayment schedules and interest obligations. Countries rarely clear them outright. Instead, old debt is often serviced with new debt, creating cycles of dependency. Debt by itself is not inherently harmful, but when capital circulates without producing proportional development outcomes, it stops being assistance and starts functioning as leverage. When large pools of money are labeled as climate action funding, tracking their actual use becomes critical. Yet in many cases, significant portions either go unaccounted for or are spent inefficiently. An audit by Oxfam found that up to $41 billion of World Bank-managed climate finance was not properly tracked over several years. In practical terms, that means we cannot reliably determine where the money went, or whether it achieved its intended purpose at all. Transparency International has flagged a related risk. Countries with high corruption scores, particularly across parts of sub-Saharan Africa, face elevated chances that climate-designated funds are diverted, misallocated, or outright stolen, rather than reaching local communities. In real-world terms, this often means climate adaptation funds are absorbed into general government budgets or routed through politically connected contracts with little measurable impact on emissions reduction or long-term resilience. The issue here is not intent, it's accountability or the lack of it. Here are real cases that illustrate how even relatively small climate projects can be compromised. In Papua New Guinea, approximately $2 million in climate funds were misappropriated from a national climate authority. The case only came to light after whistleblower reports, leading to arrests. In another example, a climate project in Russia, funded with nearly $8 million by an international facility and intended to improve energy efficiency, produced no measurable emissions reduction. Investigators later found indications of deliberate financial mismanagement. These are not fringe allegations. They are documented cases where the flow of climate finance failed to translate into meaningful, on-the-ground results. And that gap between funding and outcomes is where the real problem begins. It's not only public debt that creates downstream pressure. Corporations can also respond to new taxes, levies, or compliance requirements by passing those costs forward, raising prices, and contributing to inflation. A recent example from the UK illustrates this dynamic. The pub chain Wetherspoons cited new packaging taxes and energy levies tied to environmental policy as significant cost increases. These pressures emerged even as the company publicly stated it was trying to limit price hikes. And this pattern isn't isolated. Large retailers and global brands, including Walmart, Nike, and Ford, have repeatedly warned investors that higher tariffs and regulatory expenses compress margins. When margins tighten, prices tend to rise. Now, to be precise, These cases are not always directly linked to climate policy itself, but they demonstrate a broader mechanism. Policy-linked cost burdens can be translated into consumer prices. The result is an inflationary effect, one that quietly reduces everyday purchasing power, often without a clear line of accountability. So what's the pattern here? Urgency is used to accelerate financing decisions, often bypassing slower accountability mechanisms. Loans add long-horizon debt burdens with few transparent or enforceable outcome measures. Tracking remains weak, and corruption risks are elevated across many jurisdictions. Corporations and intermediaries respond by shifting costs to consumers, protecting margins rather than absorbing pressure. Inflation then raises the cost of living, pushing citizens into survival mode, with less time, energy, or leverage for oversight. And here's the key point. You don't need a conspiracy to understand this. You just need to follow the logic of incentives and structures, not the headlines. Urgency by itself isn't inherently bad, but urgency without transparency and without properly designed institutions can create conditions where debt, mismanagement, and inflation emerge as secondary harms. If we're serious about solutions that are both effective and just, we have to think beyond the rhetoric of emergency, towards systems that reward real results, transparency, and accountability, whether we're talking about climate spending or corporate pricing. Let me know in the comments which example stood out to you the most. And if you want more in-depth, evidence-based analysis like this, consider subscribing.